So many of us live with chronic pain every single day. It's exhausting. But what if a key to getting some relief wasn't some complex new drug, but something, well, a lot simpler, like a vitamin? Today we're asking a big question. Could vitamin D be a secret weapon in the fight against chronic pain? Let's dive in and see what the science says. And to really get a sense of how big a deal this is, just look at this number. Recent data shows that a staggering 18% of adults are living with chronic pain. That's almost 1 in every 5 people. This isn't a small problem, it's a massive public health challenge. So, that brings us right back to our main question. In this constant search for better ways to manage pain, one thing keeps popping up in the research again and again: vitamin D. But is the hype real? Is there a solid connection? Let's follow the evidence and play detective for a bit. Okay, so our investigation has to start at the very beginning. Before we can even think about treatments, we have to ask the most basic question. Is there even a link here? Do these two things, vitamin D and chronic pain, have anything to do with each other? The first logical step for scientists is to just look. They conduct these huge observational studies looking at massive groups of people to see if there's a pattern. Do people with chronic pain consistently seem to have lower vitamin D levels than people who don't? Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, it turns out the answer is anything but straightforward. When you pull together all of these observational studies, you don't really get a clean yes or no. The overall evidence for a direct link between having low vitamin D and getting chronic pain is, well, it's pretty mixed. Ultimately, it's inconclusive. But, and this is a big but, this is where things get really interesting. There's a crucial nuance here. While the link to simply having pain is a bit murky, the science points to a much stronger connection between low vitamin D levels and the intensity of the pain someone feels. And that's a really important distinction to make. And you can see this pattern pop up in the research. For instance, one study found this association in women dealing with widespread pain. Another one, this time looking at men, found that musculoskeletal pain was linked to very low levels of vitamin D. So where there's smoke, there's often fire, right? But remember, an association like this doesn't prove that one thing is causing the other. Right, so if just observing people isn't enough to prove cause and effect, what's the next step? Well, we have to intervene. We have to actually put it to the test. What happens when you give people with chronic pain vitamin D supplements? Do they actually feel better? And the gold standard for figuring this out is something called a randomized controlled trial, or an RCT. This is where things get really serious. In these experiments, one group gets the real vitamin D, another gets a placebo, a sugar pill. And the key is, nobody knows who got what until the end. This is how you weed out bias and get as close as you can to proving cause and effect. So check this out. A major review in 2022 looked at 14 of these high-quality trials. And the results? They're pretty compelling. Out of those 14 studies, a solid majority, 8 of them, found that taking vitamin D actually did reduce pain. Only 3 of them showed no significant effect. That's a pretty strong signal. And don't just take my word for it. The researchers themselves were pretty direct. They concluded our results suggest a possible role of vitamin D supplementation in alleviating the pain. But then they added this absolutely critical part, especially in vitamin D deficient individuals. And that right there seems to be the key. This isn't about vitamin D being some kind of universal painkiller for everybody. The review really zeroed in on the fact that 6 of the studies showed benefits specifically for people who were already deficient in vitamin D to begin with. So it's not a blanket solution, it's more like a targeted therapy for a specific group. But just when it feels like we're getting a clear picture, science throws us a curveball. And in this case, it's that classic chicken or the egg problem. To really get our heads around this, we need to quickly talk about one key idea. And that idea is something called a confounding factor. Basically, it's a hidden variable, a third wheel that can totally mess with your results. It can make it look like A is causing B, when in reality, this sneaky third factor, C, is pulling the strings and causing both A and B. So here's the big puzzle. Are low vitamin D levels actually contributing to more pain? That's one possibility. Or could it be the other way around? Could the chronic pain itself, by making people less active and keeping them out of the sun, be the very thing that causes their vitamin D levels to drop?
And when you think about it, this makes total sense. Our bodies make most of our vitamin D when our skin is exposed to sunlight. So if you're in constant pain, you're probably not moving around as much. You're probably spending more time indoors. And that directly leads to your body producing less vitamin D. It's a classic confounding factor, and it makes it really tough to know what's truly causing what.
Okay, so we've looked at the associations, the experiments, and these tricky confounding factors. After all that detective work, what's the final verdict on vitamin D and chronic pain? Let's boil it all down to what this actually means for you. So let's break it down. Takeaway number one, the idea that low vitamin D causes you to have chronic pain in the first place, that's uncertain. Two, there's much stronger evidence that low levels can make the pain you already have more intense. Three, supplementation seems to help the most for people who are actually deficient. And finally, number four, vitamin D is absolutely not a miracle cure, but it could be a really important piece of a very, very complex puzzle. And that really leaves us with this final big picture thought. Maybe this hunt for one single magic bullet cure for all chronic pain is a bit misguided. The story of vitamin D suggests that the future of truly effective pain management might be less about a one-size-fits-all drug and much more about finding personalized solutions that are tailored to each individual. Makes you think, doesn't it?